Well, hello and welcome. This is season 3, episode 130 with misheard song lyrics. My name is Misheard, and I'm going to do my first ever hot chocolate misheard song lyric from their song, You Sexy Thing. The misheard song lyric is, wear your bra, you sexy thing, you sexy thing, you. And then the correct lyrics are, where you from, you sexy thing, you sexy thing, you. Wear that bra. Come on, girl. All right. Thanks to my longtime college friend Marie A., who suggested this hilarious misheard song lyric from Hot Chocolate called You Sexy Thing. What you don't know is yours truly used to be in fashion design. I actually went to fashion design school in the early 1990s. Yeah, I'm not old. And Marie and I went to the same fashion school, and I met her there. And she was nice enough to, offer, hey, I can drive us in her awesome vintage VW orange bus. We lived in San Diego at the time, and then our second year was in LA. So it's a good 2.5 hour drive. And she would drive us every week to attend design classes. And thank goodness for Marie, because again, it's a long drive with traffic even longer, and having someone to talk to along the way actually made the drive very bearable. And I have long left fashion design, but Miss Marie is still active in it. So I wanted to give you the shout out. All right, so You Sexy Thing. Let's talk about the song. Hot Chocolate, the band that sang it, wrote it. What's it about? Other than You Sexy Thing, you. All right, so Hot Chocolate is a British soul band popular during the 1970s and 80s, formed by Errol Brown and Tony Wilson. They had at least one hit every year. This is amazing. From 1970 to 1984. And one of them, of course, is their 1970 song, You Sexy Thing, made the top 10 in 3 decades. That's a pretty big feat. I knew it was a really good song. I always heard it throughout the years in ads, movies. We'll mention that in a bit, but didn't realize, how a sleeper hit that song is. How did they form? Let's talk about hot chocolate. Other than, the drink itself, I do love me a good hot chocolate with marshmallows and whipped cream, but I digress. So the band itself was formed in 1968. Wow, so 54, almost 55 years ago. And they consisted of vocalist Errol Brown, guitarist Franklin D'Ali, drummer Jim King, shortly, I guess, replaced after Ian King, no relation, like the same last name, percussionist Patrick Olive, and bassist Tony Wilson, with keyboardist Larry Ferguson joining the band in the following year. The band was originally named first called Hot Chocolate Band by Mavis Smith, who worked for the Apple Corps press office, which was then shortened first to The Hot Chocolate, and then to Hot Chocolate by Mickey Most. By 1970, the band actually lineup changed considerably, included Harvey Hensley and Tony Connor, who was also a member of another band called Audience at the time, replacing D'Ali and King. And then Hot Chocolate started their recording career making a reggae version. I didn't know this, of John Lennon's Give Peace a Chance. But frontman Errol Brown was told he needed permission. Obviously, it's not his song, and it's a song by a well-known John Lennon. But then, this is how fate works. He was contacted by Apple Records, discovered that Lennon liked his reggae version, and the group was able to sign on to Apple Records. See how that works? The link was short-lived, though, as the Beatles were starting up to break up during that time, and then the Apple connection soon ended. So as one door opens, as one door closes again. All those releases were on the rack. So later in 1970, Hot Chocolate, with the help of record producer Mickey Most, began releasing tracks that became hits such as Love is Life, Emma, You Could Have Been a Lady, which I guess was a US and Canadian hit, and by April Wine, and I Believe in Love. Now, like I said earlier, all those releases were on the Rack, or AK record label owned by Most. Excuse me. So Brown and bassist Tony Wilson wrote most of the original material and also provided hits for Herman's Hermits, big band in the 60s, 70s. Bet Your Life I Do, Julie Felix, Heaven is Here, and Mary Hopkin, Think About Your Children. And then sooner or later, the band became, started to become their own UK singles chart regulars. One of the hits from this period was Brother Louie, featuring a guest spoken vocal from Alexis Comer. I love those spoken vocals. So let's talk about how they started to gain success. It was definitely in the disco era, the mid-70s, and that's when Hot Chocolate hit the ground running. So for those of you youngin' who's maybe heard of disco or kind of did, but really didn't understand, let's break down disco for just a bit. It's a definitely famous genre of dance music, what they called a subculture that emerged in the 1970s from the U.S., all right, good old U.S. of A., urban nightlife scene. It typically had a four on the floor beat, syncopated bass lines, string sections, horns, electric piano, synthesizer, and some electric rhythm guitars. When I read that, and as I'm saying it, I just think of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, that's perfect definition of who they were. It started with a mixture of music from venues popular with Italian American, Hispanic, and Latino Americans and African Americans in the Philly and NYC or New York City area during the late 60s, early 70s. And they say again that disco can be a reaction by the 1960s counterculture to both the dominance of rock music and the stigmatization of dance music at the time. Several dance styles were made from it. I remember I had to learn it in gym class or PE or physical ed for some of you that grew up in the 80s like I did. Such famous moves or dance moves we learned was the bump. You usually bump your side hip, to your partner's hip, and the hustle. Dun, 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 dun. So there we go. In the course of the 1970s, disco music was developed further by many famous acts. I'm just going to name a few from the US and Europe. Some of them you might have heard. ABBA, the Bee Gees, Donna Summer, Gloria Gaynor, Giorgio Moroder, father of synthesizer, Earth, Wind, and Fire, like I said, Chaka Khan, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Thelma Houston, Sister Sledge, The Tramps, and the Village People. Anyway. While performers garnered public attention, record producers working behind the scenes played an important role also in helping disco grow. In the late 1970s, most major U.S. cities started to have disco club scenes, and DJs or disc jockeys would mix dance records at clubs such as the famous Studio 54 in Manhattan, a venue popular amongst celebrities. There's actually several Netflix stories about it, documentaries. And then nightclub goers would be coming in. I love the fashion, wearing sexy, extravagant, expensive fashion. There was also, of course, a thriving drug culture in the disco scene. And I guess drugs that would enhance the experience, and dancing to the loud music and flashing lights before raves, that came in the 90s. The drugs of choice were cocaine and quaaludes, which I didn't know this because I'm not a big druggie, is that the latter, being quaaludes, is commonly known in the disco subculture as disco biscuits. So now you know. All right, so disco clubs were also associated with promiscuity, obviously, drugs, the headiness of all loud music, finding, and so became the sexual revolution of the era, and of course was made famous with the 1977 movie Saturday Night Live with Mr. John Travolta, Tony Manero, I think that was his name. And Thank God It's Friday, 1978, which also attributed to the disco popularity. Now, I'm just going to say, as a kid growing up in the 80s in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon in the United States, there was a place called Earthquake Ethel's. It's now a auto shop now, but back in the day, my aunt would go and bump and grind there, meeting new friends and male friends, and apparently it was called Earthquake Ethel because the dance floor was lit up at midnight or something, and pretend to be like an earthquake. How cool is that? Why didn't we have that when I was growing up in the 90s when I was 20? But I digress. Okay, so disco, back to disco. So of course, like anything that goes up, it must go down. So it declined, as soon as the 70s, 80s started to come, and there was actually this infamous disco demolition night. Look it up, Google it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Long story short, many disco albums were demolished. And it continued its decline specifically in the U.S. It started in the U.S. and now the decline early 80s. But however, it remained popular in Italy and some European countries throughout the 80s. And during this time, it actually became popular in, of all places, India and the Middle East. And that's where they blended some regional folk styles such as gazelles and belly dancing and made it their own. Gotta love it. So disco would eventually become a key influence in the development of what we now know today as electronic dance music, house music, hip-hop, new wave, dance punk, and post-disco. And the style has had several new scenes in the 1990s, and the influence of disco remains strong across. And I'm going to give you some good examples here. So there's definitely been a current revival of disco sounds since the early 2010s. Some of the popularities of early 2020 albums include Confessions on a Dance Floor, love that album, Random Access Memories, RAM by Daft Punk, The Slow Rush, Cause I Love You, Lizzo. Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa, one of my favorite albums right now. Hey UX, What's Your Pleasure, It's What It Is, and Kylie Minogue's album itself is titled Disco. So it is still alive even now. So let's go back to the song and You Sexy Thing. So, a combination of high production standards, the growing influence of the main songwriting team of Wilson and Brown of Hot Chocolate, and tight vocal harmonies, definitely I agree with that, enable them to secure further big hits such as You Sexy Thing and Everyone's a Winner. Everyone's a Winner, which were also U.S. hits, peaking at number 3 in 1976 and number 6 in 1979. And then after Wilson's departure for a solo career that included a 1976 album, I Like Your Style, Brown assumed all songwriting duties. Wilson had initially replaced by, let me say this again. Wilson was initially replaced by Brian Satterwhite before Satterwhite departed and the band and Olive switched to bass and his primary instrument. Then in 1977, after 15 hits, I just want one, they finally reached number 1 was So You Win Again. It was one of the few of the recording that was not written, at least partly, by Brown. The track was a Russ Ballard composition. So let's give Mr. Russ Ballard some props here. Now, did you know the band became the only group and one of just 3 acts that had a hit in every year of the 1970s and the UK charts? You know, the only other 2 artists that have done that is being Elvis Presley and Diana Ross. That's a big did you know. So kudos to you, Hot Chocolate. And then the band continued well into the 1980s, and they also hit another big hit record with It Started With a Kiss in 1982, which reached number 5 in the UK. And in all, the group charted 25 UK top 40 singles. I had no idea. Now I know. And then did you know that their single You Sexy Thing, that what we're talking about today, became the only track that became British top 10 status in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. That's 3 decades that this song has just endured. So it's a sleeper, I'm telling you. So later years, of course, that this song that we're talking about today, You Sexy Thing, renewed interest in the band Hot Chocolate and came in part because of their appearance in a lot of successful film soundtracks, starting with the 1997 comedy The Full Monty. Errol Brown and Larry Ferguson departed in the band in 1986, ultimately leading the group to be disbanded. And then Brown then began a solo career. 2 of his singles made the UK singles chart, Personal Touch and Body Rockin'. Hot Chocolate had a hit in 1988 in Germany. Never Pretend was written by Harvey Hensley and Susan Studdard, and the vocalist was Grant Evelyn. Then the band's popularity was verified with 2 compilation albums. Both reached number 1 in the UK albums chart. In 2003, Errol Brown was given the MBE, which is the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. It's a British order of chivalry rewarding contributions to the arts, sciences, work with charitable and welfare organizations, and public service outside the civil service. So I would kind of liken it to our U.S. Kennedy Honors Award, right? And in 2004, the Ivor Novello Award for his contribution to British music. Go, go, go. That's awesome. And then in 1992, the band reformed with new vocalist Greg Banas and keyboardist Steve Ansel, Andy Smith, Willie Dowling, and Steve Matthews, which the latter 2 then eventually departed the band in 1994, and manager agent Rick Martin took control over the band's bookings and appearances. Kenny Simon also took over lead vocals in 2010 following the departure of Banas, and Hot Chocolate continued to make live appearances in the UK and Europe. Another did you know? On May 6, 2015, original frontman and principal songwriter Errol Brown died from liver cancer. He was 71. God rest his soul. All right, so You Sexy Thing. What about the song? Well, it was written by Hot Chocolate's lead singer Errol Brown, who we now know has passed on, and bass guitarist Tony Wilson, and was produced by Mickey Most. The song was released back in October 75, I mentioned earlier, and reached number 2 on the UK singles chart in November 1975, as well as number 3 on the US Billboard Hot 100 the following February. And Billboard, our own Billboard, ranked this song the number 22 song for 1976. Well, what's it about? Not about, hey girl, wear your bra, or where are you from? The song was actually originally a 1975 B-side. Here's another B-side song that flipped over to the A-side once they realized they had a hit. Not yet conceived that the song could be a hit, producer Most put it on the flip side of the Hot Chocolate single Blue Night. The song was later, of course, remixed by Most, who re-released it in the A-side some months later on his RAK, R-A-K label. And that's, the rest is history. The song was a hit and ultimately became the group's best known song. Another Did You Know, in the UK, the song was poised to hit number one, but was beaten out by, this little single called Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen on November 29th, 1975, which leaped from number 9 and leapfrogged over Hot Chocolate's You Sexy Thing to number 1. Then a 1987 remix by a Ben Liebran hit number 10. So someone remixed it, also did well. It again reinvigorated public interest in Hot Chocolate, the band, and then prompted them to do a compilation album, The Very Best of Hot Chocolate, featuring the Liebran remix, which subsequently reached number 1 on the UK album charts back in February of 87. So it just keeps going. Then, fast forward 10 years later, in 1997, of course, like I said earlier, they were in the famous 1997 movie called, you guessed it, Full Monty, where the lead male, Gaz, played by actor Robert Carlyle, performs a striptease to the music of You Sexy Thing. Memorable scene. And then another U.S. resurgence in 1999, 2 years later, can be credited to a Burger King television commercial in which the song is played while the camera examined a double Whopper. Wow. Media uses, lots. You Sexy Thing has been seen in many numerous 1990s films. I mentioned Full Monty already, but did you know it was in Reservoir Dogs? Boogie Nights, that makes sense. Dogma with our episode 2. We talked about Alanis Morissette as God there. Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, and Bicentennial Man. And then in the 2000s, it was in Dude, Where's My Car, Rat Race, About Schmidt, and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And then in 2010s, Grown Ups and Big Mamas, Like Father, Like Son. The song was also featured on season 1 of that 70s show called Thanksgiving. Also featured in a pilot episode of the series Malcolm in the Middle and the original Armistead Maupin's 1993 TV adaptation with the hit Tales of the City with a young Laura Linney back then. And then in 2010, it was also featured in promos for the series Hot in Cleveland on TV Land. Oh man, I miss Betty White. She was in that. And then, of course, I said the Full Monty, but it also was in the 2013 play version of the Full Monty. Whoa. And then season 2 episode of the American version of The Office. It was in the episode titled The Dundies. The song was played as Ryan the Temp was presented the Hottest in the Office award. Covers, in 1997, there are 2 covers that were released at the same time of the reissue of the Hot Chocolate original. One cover was by English pop dance at Clock, while the other version was by pop duo T-Shirt featuring actress Chloe Trine and songwriter Miranda Cooper. Both are reworkings with the original music and lyrics, but with new additional vocal segments. So it is beloved. Thank you, Miss Marie, for saying this and saying this misheard song lyric. I've learned so much about Hot Chocolate and You Sexy Thing, and reminiscing about our days in the 90s when we were, chugging along on I-5 going to LA. So if you have any great suggestions like this, you can contact us all on any of our, of course, social media sites. Also, you can email us at misheard, that's MISS space heard, HEARD songs at gmail.com. I didn't mean space in the email, but it's an actual name, misheard. And send it to us, and we might do a shout out on you. But in the meantime, keep singing those songs wrong. Bye.